Those remaining are the foreperson, myself, and the court reporter, and a juror that we'll identify as juror number 14. So, Madam Foreperson, would you please inquire of the juror as to the reasons why this juror cannot, why he has the state of mind in reference to this case that will prevent him from acting impartially and without prejudice to the substantial rights of any of the parties? The foreperson. Just rephrase that. Just ask the witness to tell you why. Juror number 14, can you tell me why you feel that you cannot be impartial in this case? Yes, because of the previous watching of the media, watching the video of what happened, and then also working and living in that area. Sometimes I frequent the restaurant close to that area where the shooting took place, and also that my wife sometimes has to go into that area to a supermarket not far down, just down the street from the incident. So, do those factors prevent you from being impartial? And if so, what would be the prejudice there? The prejudice would be, I've already formed an opinion on the guilt or innocence of the suspect. So I want to remind you that you are not making a decision as to innocence or guilty. The burden of proof is probable cause. Correct. So do you believe that you've already formed an opinion of probable cause about the target? Correct. And that would prevent you from being impartial to the target? Correct. That would make me partial. Okay, juror number 14. I will ask you to retire and return for the next case because you cannot be impartial toward the target in this particular case. And I'm making that finding that you cannot be impartial and you would be prejudiced against the target. All right. Thank you, Madam Foreperson. And juror number 14, I'm going to ask that you leave the hearing room and we'll see you for the next case this month. Thank you very much. Juror number 14 is leaving the hearing room, and I am advising him that because he had read the foreperson statement and he is familiar with this case, that he's admonished and advised not to discuss this case with anyone and to uphold the secrecy of the grand jury, particularly as to this case. Thank you, juror number 14. Okay. Madam Foreperson, he is excused? Yes? Yes, he is excused. Thank you. Deputy District Attorney McKinney and 23 grand jurors entered the grand jury hearing room. Back on the record, let the record reflect that there are now 23 grand jurors present. Mr. McKinney has re-entered the hearing room, and myself, the legal advisor. I am here as well. Give me a second, Madam Foreperson. So, Madam Foreperson, at this time, do you give Mr. McKinney permission to provide the grand jurors with a brief opening statement? So ordered? So ordered. Thank you. Mr. McKinney, as you will recall, since you were just here a couple of months ago or a month ago, that you are there near the court reporter. If you would like a podium, we'll bring one out for you. No need. Okay? Okay. Opening statement. Mr. McKinney, good morning. My name is John McKinney. I'm a deputy district attorney for the County of Los Angeles, and I'm pleased to present this case to you this morning and over the next 2 days. This is People versus the target Eric Holder. This case involves the death of Ermias Joseph Askedam, known to the world as Nipsey Hussle. Mr. Askedam lived most of his life in South Los Angeles. He grew up in an area of Slauson and Crenshaw. During his life, he became an associate and then member of a local street gang in the area called the Rolling 60s. He was a fixture in his later teens and early 20s at businesses near the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw. His activity started to change during his late teen years and early 20s, away from street gang activities to music. He became consumed with music and started a burgeoning career as a rapper and really made a name for himself and a career for himself from the bottom up and from the outside in. He started producing his own music and selling music out of the trunk of his car. He did it for years. He became so popular on this underground circuit that he became sought after by some of the bigger record labels and eventually signed a record deal. And after over 10 years of selling music quite successfully, he had his first album produced recently, which was nominated for a Grammy Award. He was well known in the area of Slauson and Crenshaw. He is beloved in that area. In fact, has fans all over the world. The target in this case, Mr. Holder, is also someone who grew up in the area of South Los Angeles, also became a member of the Rolling 60s gang, which is a Crip gang in the South Los Angeles, was also familiar to people in the area of Slauson and Crenshaw. Mr. Holder, as it turns out, also was an aspiring rapper, but not nearly as successful as Mr. Askedam or Nipsey Hussle. This case involves the shooting and killing of Mr. Askedam and the shooting and injuries to two other individuals, Carrie Lathan and Shermy Villanueva, that occurred on the afternoon of Sunday, March 31st, 2019. Mr. Hussle, Mr. Askedam, and I'll probably go back and forth between calling him Nipsey and Mr. Hussle and Mr. Askedam, all the same person, made an unannounced appearance at a strip mall at the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw. That place was a place that in his younger years, he spent a lot of time doing activities that weren't necessarily lawful activities. But in his later years, as he became successful, he ended up buying that property. So he and his brother owned and operated most of the businesses at that property. You'll hear a little bit about some of the businesses that operated at that property, the main business being a store called the Marathon Store, where he sold a lot of his own merchandise. So on Sunday the 31st, he showed up unannounced. He got there a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He got out of his vehicle and he started greeting people in the parking lot, and he stayed in the parking lot for the entire time he was there up until the time he was shot. During that time, he signed autographs, he took pictures with fans, he talked to some of his friends. Some of them were also fellow Rolling 60s gang members, and really nothing unusual or eventful occurred. Mr. Holder showed up. Mr. Holder showed up apparently not knowing that Mr. Hussle was going to be there that day, just a chance encounter. He arrived at the parking lot from another city. He was being driven by a person who we will call witness number 1 in this case. Mr. Holder got out of the car, immediately walked up to the group where Mr. Hussle or Mr. Askedam was, and they had a conversation. The conversation is important because that conversation has something to do with Mr. Askedam accusing Mr. Holder of snitching, which in the gang world is a very serious offense. During the course of the hearing today, we'll try and elicit as much information from witnesses who were present about that conversation as we can. But apparently, the conversation had something to do with Mr. Askedam telling Mr. Holder that word on the street was that Mr. Holder was snitching. The conversation wasn't particularly intense. It wasn't particularly belligerent, and it lasted for about 4 minutes. Mr. Holder eventually got some food, got in the car with witness number 1, and they drove off. After they drove off, Mr. Holder pulled out a gun, told witness number 1 to drive around the block. Witness number 1 drove Mr. Holder around the block, also told him to put the gun away. She was concerned that he might shoot her accidentally or shoot somebody from her car. He then told her to pull over at a certain location near the strip mall. He put on a shirt. He had been shirtless. He put on his shirt and he told her to wait there. He'd be right back. She didn't necessarily know where he was going. He walked off back toward the parking lot, where he then walked up to within a couple of feet of Mr. Askedam and fired multiple rounds into him from 2 different guns. One gun was a semi-automatic handgun, which leaves casings at the scene typically when it's fired, and the other gun was a revolver, which does not leave any evidence of a shooting other than the bullets that expel from the gun. After firing multiple rounds, Mr. Holder ran back to witness number 1's car, jumped in the car, instructed her to drive away. She asked what happened. He told her to drive, otherwise he would slap her. She was confused. She didn't know.